Hello everyone and welcome to VMware vForum Nordic and Baltics 2021. My name is Tholstorf. I'm a senior engineer at VMware and today I have Henrik with me as well.
Thanks, Kim. My name is Henrik Tranæs and I'm one of the specialists for our Tanzu offerings here in the Nordics.
Similar to other events, vForum has gone virtual, but while we can't be together in a physical setting, a virtual vForum thankfully still allows us the opportunity to meet, share, and learn. Last week, the vForum multi-cloud session ran, and it was the first of 3 planned sessions, which is this year's vForum Nordic and Baltic event. Today, we are focusing on how to streamline the path to production with VMware Tanzu. Just like the Inuit language has an unusually large number of words for snow, modern application, DevOps, AI, blockchain, and other trends are just words grabbed from the spectrum of digital transformation. The technical aspect of this transformation was that the renewed focus on letting software and application innovation drive business outcome created some derived infrastructure technologies like Kubernetes that is absolute key for any company or VMware operation to master if they want to stay relevant. In 2 days, we have the third and last session in this vForum series covering how VMware's secure access and service edge bring users, cloud networking, and cloud security together. So there's much more to come from the vForum Nordic and Baltic series, and I hope you can join us for this session on Thursday as well. But back to the agenda today. We will be kicking off with a keynote by Gustafsson and Henrik, followed by a technical session to give us an overview of the elements and disciplines needed to fully automate the path from source code through testing and all the way to production. We'll finish off a Q&A round with Henrik and I, where we will do our best to gather up and answer all of your questions. But before we dive in, I want to go through a few housekeeping tips. As you join us via Zoom, you may have already discovered the Q&A function, but if not, you can find the Q&A button at the bottom of your window. This will let you ask questions, which we can answer during the event or at the Q&A round at the end of our session today. We'll all do our best to answer as fast as we can, but we may push particular interesting questions to the actual Q&A as well, group some of the similar questions and answer them as a whole in the end. But that's enough for me. Let's get to the keynote with Per and Henrik.
Hello and welcome to vForum Online 2021. I'm Per Gustafsson. I'm the Regional Director for VMware in the Nordic and the Baltics, and we are here to speak about modern application. With me, I have my colleague Henrik. Why don't you introduce yourself, Henrik?
Thanks, Per. So my name is Henrik Tranæs, and I've been running the sales for Tanzu in the Nordics for the last 3 years.
Great. Yeah, application is a space that we are investing in heavily. We have acquired Pivotal, we have acquired Heptio, we have built out our capabilities to be able to manage and build application across clouds and support our customer in this ongoing transformation. And the transformation has the application at heart. It's been ongoing for quite some while, but the pandemic has definitely put new demands and expectations on organization to develop and modernize their applications. We've done some studies. Henrik, you've spoken to a lot of customers. What's the findings?
Thanks, Per. So some of the findings we have from is actually from a Forrester study we conducted with a number of CEOs in 2020. And we wanted to understand, what their priorities is. And one of the top priorities for them is actually to improving the application portfolio. About 80% says that we need to do something about it, or we're already doing something about it. However, the finding also showed that about half are not there, or they're not making progress with the modernization. And some of the reasons for that is actually it's quite difficult to modernize your applications. It's easy to do lift and shift somewhat, but it's difficult to understand your own application estate within your company, within all the teams and all the business units. And what we've seen in VMware also is that we need to kind of map out and understand how the applications are fitted together and how they are actually acting on various infrastructures. Also, we've been looking at specifically why are customers then, modernizing their applications. What's the business outcome, right? So one of the key outcomes, of course, is to deliver new experiences for their customers. So that either be in a production line improvement, going from VMs to containers, moving from one developer framework to another, but also specifically just to work with the competition in modernizing applications, right? So you are now competing with as an incumbent with the startups in your business, and they're using cloud native technology and modern applications, and those you need to do so also. So it could be that your web shop is built on internet information servers, and now you need to move to Kubernetes to scale up or scale down. Secondly, we are also trying to manage a growing number of vulnerabilities, both in the old software and also in the new software stack. So that's also a drive sometimes to modernize your applications. But Per, you're the director in VMware, and you're working with our customers across the Nordic region. How do you experience this application modernization, and what are the talks that you're having with your customers?
Well, I would say it's about taking decisions, categorizing your application and decide what to do with them. Which one should be retired, which one should be, newly developed, which one should be retained and optimized, which one should be rehosted and migrated maybe to more of a cloud operating model. So there's a lot of decision that is needed to make. And I think that's mostly what I'm involved in, understanding the strategy regarding the application portfolio and how we can support them. But why don't you go into a little bit more in detail, Henrik, how we support our customer in this journey?
Thanks, Per. Yeah, so as this slide shows, we need to address both the applications and the infrastructure. So at VMware, today we're actually working with our customers in modernize the application estate. We are using our experts in driving a number of modernization efforts for the application estate. We are using interview-based business outcomes discussions. We're using application navigators to see how cloud ready the customer's application is, if they need to move from one framework to another, from one infrastructure to another. At the same time, with our knowledge in Kubernetes, our knowledge in virtualization, we're also helping customers modernize the infrastructure to run containers, to run Kubernetes, and also to run the new developer toolings that we're going to see a little more in the demo in the other session. So all in all, at VMware, we're addressing both things in order for customers to be successful. And the market is telling us also, right? So the latest report from IDC around the market share of the container software is actually giving us a strong first place here. So it's good to see that the efforts we have been working on over the last years is starting to bear fruit, and that we're actually helping our customers in this journey, both in building stacks of container management systems, but also modernizing the application landscape.
Great, thank you so much, Henrik. And more detail and more conversation about this will be possible in the deeper session, where we'll go through everything more in detail. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoy vForum 2021. Goodbye.
Thanks, Per, and to you, Henrik. I think it's a really interesting point that the applications are at the heart of any digital transformation journey. Personally, I've seen a lot of business focus on everything around IT, but application infrastructure and developer pipeline. I think this is a pretty good segue into our technical session, where Neven will dive into the intricacies of the path to production. Again, during the session, I would very much like you to contribute by asking any questions that you have in the Q&A window. So I think it's time to hand it over to Neven.
Hello, welcome to Streamlining Path to Production with VMware Tanzu session today. My name is Neven Cvetkovic, and I'm from the Tanzu Solution Engineering team covering Benelux and Nordics. So in today's session, we'll look at the path to production and what does it mean to streamline a path to production or streamline something. Well, To streamline something is to make a system or an organization a bit more efficient, more effective by employing faster or simpler working methods. So what are some of the keywords that we heard? More efficient, more effective, more consistent, more scalable, simpler, faster, more affordable, more secure. So what is the modern path to production and why is it important? Well, we start off with design and ideas, something that product owners, agile product owners and developers will work on and develop into a product, some feature that will be used by the end users, consumers in the form of a UI, some kind of experience that users will use, and hopefully provide feedback back to product owners and developers so that the most important features get prioritized and get to the market faster. So why is it streamlining the path to production important? Well, let's zoom out. The applications that we are bringing to the market, there needs to be a better way, more efficient way, more effective way, a more consistent way, more automated way that's scalable, simpler, faster, a bit more affordable. It affects our budgets, and while not compromising on the security. So how do we do that? What does the modern path to production look like? Let's take a look. Whoa, that's a busy slide. Let's digest this a bit by bit. Okay, so where do we start? Modern applications eventually need to be containerized for enabling the automation and resource optimization. When you think about that simple fact of containerizing application, it's not a big deal. Anyone can do it. You have a Docker file, they run image locally, that's great. But in the enterprise context, you have to be in compliance with security standards, policies, so it is a big deal. So how are we going to make sure that certain image created by someone individually is actually protected, secured, and can be safely deployed into production? That can be time consuming. So the Tanzu framework brings you a bunch of these capabilities to help you benefit from this technology and being able to have a consistent production pipeline. So let's take a look. So first, we ensure that the developers have access to a modern framework that will help them to build modern architectures, microservices, data pipelines, distributed systems, and so on. I'm specifically talking about the Spring framework, which is being used by more than 5 million developers around the globe. Spring is the #1 framework for Java. More than 60% of Java developers use Spring as their primary framework. It's a most loved framework on Stack Overflow. What it does, it allows us to do microservices, reactive, cloud, web apps, serverless, event-driven, batch type of applications. There is about 15 million projects that generated on start.spring.io in 2019 alone, and we are still compiling the 2020 numbers. So let's take a look. Start.spring.io. It's essentially a web application that helps us initialize and bootstrap the Spring projects. We start off with the very simple demo app. We can add some dependencies like, let's say, some actuator endpoints, some database drivers, maybe some other components. And what we do, we can actually explore the skeleton of the app that is being made. We can download it as a zip and import in any of your favorite integrated development environments. Similarly, we do offer the .NET. There is a .NET support for .NET developers with a Steeltoe framework. In a similar manner, there is a Steeltoe initializer that can offer some of those things for the .NET developers as well. Okay, once the coding is done and it is ready for the to be containerized, that's where the automation starts. It's something that we call continuous integration. We do understand that packaging an application is maybe not a job for developer, as this reduces developer productivity and adds a risk to your operations. That's why with Tanzu, we offer automated container packaging engine. That's something that's called Tanzu Build Service that validates the image. It allows you for reproducible builds, easy patching, and it's totally secure. That way, developers, they don't need to be worried about the building images because you have a more standard reproducible way across the entire organization when it comes to application containerization. So let's take a look at the application real quick. So this is a Spring Pet Clinic application. We can click around. It's a typical app that has a backend database. We can also see a code base for it. We're hosting this on GitHub. It could be anywhere. And we use for continuous integration, we use a tool that's called Concourse, but it could be any of your existing continuous integration tools, such as Jenkins, Azure DevOps, or some other tools that you already have, either SaaS or on-premise tools. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the application real quick. We're going to kick off the change. Let's take a look. Main. Let's look at the resources. Maybe there is a messages, and let's take a look at the message. So let's change something to edit, and let's say, hey, and updating. So we have made a change. We'll try to change this welcome message to something that's called hey, and let's see if how that goes. While we are waiting for the changes to be picked up, let's take a look at the previous build and what happens. So we can see we're getting source code. We're doing some compilation. It's a Maven, so it's downloading some of the jars, dependencies from the Maven repository. So this is a local artifactory tools. So we're compiling, we are testing, we're doing some initial unit testing, unit tests, and then finally we are updating the build service image. So we are using the build service that is hosted in our environment. That is essentially building the image from the given jar files. We can see that we are using some of the best practices, Java best practices, how to build, how to layer the image, and how to do that. So we can see that the source code has started, the continuous integration has started, and later on we will see we're using also Concourse for the continuous deployment part, but that's coming up later. Okay, at this point now we have a packaged application, packaged as a container, and the next step is to put all these images into an internal image registry. In our case, we're going to use Harbor, but it could be any of the other public offerings, such as Docker Hub or any of the public clouds or any other offerings that you have. Hopefully that container image registry does have a role-based access controls with some automated image scanning and signing. So let's take a look at Harbor. So we log in first. Harbor is the on-prem solution hosted. You can host it in your own environment. It's an open source project, and it is part of the Tanzu line of products. So let's take a look at our project. We have 2 container images. Let's take a look at Spring Pet Clinic. We have built already. We kicked off the build, remember, just moments ago, and we see that there is a build 1, build 2, build 3 with some number of vulnerabilities. We can see there is a fair amount of vulnerabilities, some of them high, some of them medium. If we expand, we can see that this specific one is the heap buffer overflow in free type in Google Chrome. We can see a bit more details for more information and if it is relevant for us. Great, so that was that. We can also take a look at the specific configuration of this repository. We can prevent vulnerable images from running if the severity is more than, let's say, critical or high. There is a number of scanners that we can employ, define some properties, members. Also, Harbor is also a repository for Helm charts that you can use in your environments. There's a number of different services that we can integrate, such as Claire. That's another image scanning. We have a notary as part of our as our signing authority for the container images and things like that. Okay, the other aspect of the application development is the possible requirement for backing systems such as databases, messaging queues, some analytic modules, things like that. When it comes to leveraging things like Kafka or let's say Redis, you can definitely go to public repository and grab your ready-made images or Helm charts. Although that will take time and potentially introduce a risk if you don't know the provenance of that code. With Tanzu, you're going to have access to a catalog of the most used images in a self-service way, all customized specific to your organization based on your golden images secured in your private repository. So let's take a look at our application. Our application is leveraging the backing database, Pet Clinic database, that's based on MySQL. We can see the details of that app real quick. We can see some installation things. Let's take a look at the catalog of available things. We can look at databases, for example. We can look at another MySQL database. We can see it's a Helm chart. We can customize the chart. So let's try to deploy this one real quick. We can see the YAML. We can customize that. And what's important is that we can see that this has been built by a Bitnami team, our Tanzu application catalog team, that's been doing this for probably over 10 years, that they have experience building third-party software, securing it, using the best practices. And there is something specific that I'm looking at. I'm trying to find, yes, there is liveness probes that we set up. We are using security context. I'm trying to find it here in the application real quick. Essentially employing the best practices, Kubernetes best practices, how to run these applications when it comes to open source software. We've seen the recent exploits in the essentially poisoning of your third-party supply chain, software supply chain with SolarWinds. So it's very, very important that your organization trusts the third-party software and that you have a way to do that effectively. And that's what Tanzu application catalog is. We can take a look at the specifics. So we can look at the Tanzu application catalog, which is the SaaS offering that helps you pick and choose things that you want to have in your environment. So we have containers and the Helm charts across the board. So, hey, there is Kafka. There's a number of things that you can add to this, possibly Jenkins, Consul, things like that. So the next step in the path to production lifecycle is the continuous delivery, CD, similar to continuous deployment of these images into our Kubernetes environment. These images have been built by, we've seen, by the build service without automated container packaging, or possibly coming from a validated catalog of third-party runtimes and images through Bitnami, through our Tanzu application catalog. Great. So What is this Kubernetes environment? Well, Tanzu offers Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, which is our enterprise-ready Kubernetes runtime. It's a multi-cloud, so a single distribution that runs in your existing vSphere infrastructure. It runs on public clouds and at the edge environments. This Kubernetes environment is open source aligned. There's a lot of open source projects as part of it. So it is an upstream Kubernetes with lifecycle management through cluster API, ingress controllers such as Contour, networking provided by container networking with Antrea, backup with Alero, Octane, Sonoboy, just to name a few. So Tanzu Kubernetes Grid makes it a bit easier to run Kubernetes across the multiple clouds with a focus on simplified installation, automated multi-cluster operations, and integrated platform services. Also worthwhile mentioning, VMware is a top contributor to Kubernetes. I believe over last 12 months in 2020, it's been number 2 overall contributor to Kubernetes project. So let's take a look at our application real quick. So our application has been deployed. We can see the message has changed. We are using the also Concourse as our continuous deployment platform, but it could be any of your existing tools, either on-prem or some of the SaaS offerings, such as Jenkins. Argo CD is a very popular one that I've seen around. Great. So let's take a look at the vSphere environment real quick. So this is a vSphere environment, vSphere 7. Kubernetes does come as a embedded workload management inside vSphere hypervisor. So I have a tenant here. I do have one cluster with one master node and 2 worker nodes. So let's actually take a look how we can add more components. So let's say kubectl get Tanzu clusters. Let's see existing clusters. We should have one. Yes, we have cluster 1. Let's create another one. So let's do a cluster 2 YAML file. So we're using YAML file to create the cluster, cluster 2 with with a tenant 1 namespace. It's a version 17. It could be any version. I think cluster 1 was 18. So we could possibly upgrade it later on. I'm just creating a very simple cluster with 1 master node and 1 worker node. Great. So how do I do that? Well, very simple. kubectl apply -f cluster 2 YAML, and that should kick off our. So it's been created. Well, it's not created yet. It's been posted to create. So the controllers will start working. If we do take a look, we'll see that tenant 1 started creating new cluster 2. It started creating a master node and the cluster. So that's great, but that's not enough. So with this, we're going to have probably a number of different environments, right? So as we go down this path, you'll see a number of containers and clusters that grow exponentially in your enterprise. And the operations team will need to have a way to manage the footprint at this scale. So how do we do that? Well, with Tanzu, you'll have a global control plane from where you can manage any conformant Kubernetes cluster. So that would be your Tanzu Kubernetes Grid clusters, but also any other conformant clusters such as GKE, EKS, AKS, OpenShift, and so on. So this tool is called VMware Tanzu Mission Control, or TMC for short. It is a centralized management platform that we use to operate and secure our Kubernetes infrastructure, modern applications across the teams and clouds. So what it does, it provides operators, with a single control point to give your developers the independence that they need to drive the business forward, while enabling them with a consistent management and operations across these environments, with an increased security posture and the governance model. So with this TMC, developers will be enabled with a self-service, so they can create their own environments. We'll see that in a second. So TMC is a SaaS offering, but it's perfectly secure. So let's take a look. So in addition of TMC, it does allow you to strengthen the security over our containerized applications. We'll see how easy it is to manage the security and compliance across your entire Kubernetes footprint in your enterprise. So we'll look at the policy and individual clusters, creation of the namespaces, workspaces, and things like that. So let's take a look. So here's environment. It's a Tanzu Mission Control. It's a multi-tenant environment, of course. I have my organization. In my organization, I do have a cluster groups. This is an end-to-end cluster group. I have a number of clusters that are attached to this. PES tools, PES management, some OpenShift clusters, some Azure, some Amazon clusters, and so on and so on. So let's take a look at the PES tools cluster real quick. We can see the nodes, the namespaces. We can look at the workspaces, workloads. We can hide the Tanzu workloads and system workloads and really focus on the specifics. Workloads that are available. So yes, I see Harbor deployed as an environment. Oh, there is my environment 399. So I can see the actual workload and how it was deployed. Great. What else? We can look at the policies, different templates. Also, what's quite useful are the insights, policies insights. So you can define the policies and you can still not enforce them, but still see which one of the workloads is infracting on your policies, breaking your policies, and so we can follow up with these teams and make our policies even better. Also, what's really interesting are the inspections for your governance. So we can see different results of the inspections. This is a light inspection. I can see the result. Yes, it was conformant, but we can see that some of the previous full-fledged conformance inspection did not work as well. So there is 7 failed things, conformance tests that are not running. Okay. Tanzu offers a very special kind of observability that does enable developers with the visibility into how applications behave in production or testing or different environments. So we can make the updates and iterate on the approach. You might already have some observability tooling. A lot of customers use Prometheus, Grafana, things like that. But we're talking about the deeper observability and to really look at the visibility across the applications, across the clusters, and it is based on the open standards. So what it does, it allows operators to analyze the entire infrastructure with the health and performance, so we can troubleshoot this rapidly. It does offer DevOps and SREs, a full stack observability, so we can ensure that the efficient operation of the life cycle. Tanzu observability, also known as Wavefront, is being used by some of the largest and most complex enterprises as a source of truth for all the stakeholders across the organizations. So let's take a look. So here's an example. Also, it's a SaaS offering. So it's a Wavefront Tanzu observability by VMware. Here is my application. If I do click on my application a bit more quicker, find owner, There we go. Some error pages. Something did happen. If I do look at things, I'm going to see that things are progressing rapidly. So I can see that I have 110 failed requests, 20% errors. I can see the request latency. I can see JVM, how the JVM behaves from number of my JVMs, my number of my containers and pods, the memory usage, and so on. So also, not only that, we can also see our different clusters. So we can see clusters. So it's an end-to-end visibility and observability from the infrastructure all the way up to the application. Okay, and when it comes to networking capabilities, this is an area of unique strength for VMware. We have several container networking that is open source aligned. So we start with Antrea, which is a pod and container networking, ingress controller with our Project Hunter, service match with Open vSwitch, and so on and so on. Our approach to networking spans across the VMs and containers, on-prem and in public clouds. So you have a single mesh across your different environments. So what is the value of this service mesh offering? Well, you have a consistent observability, control, and security across any cloud, on-prem or public. You have a centralized visibility, and where remediation is very important, so you can exactly see where the problems are. You can see some statistics. You can look at the global policies for users and services. And ultimately, you increase your centralized security posture with complete audit trails to address your compliance issues. So let's take a look. So here's an example. Tanzu Service Mesh is a SaaS offering that installs different components into your Kubernetes clusters on-prem or in public clouds. Would that be vSphere environments or any of the public offerings that we have? So what do we have? Here we have an application that spans two clusters. One is on the Amazon EKS, and the other one is on the Tanzu Service Mesh 1 cluster. The app is a distributed app that has different components, shopping. We have some load generation that generates some load every now and then. We have a cart, shopping cart, microservice that talks to Redis, data store, ordering that talks to Mongo, and some payment systems, users that talk to the user database, that's Mongo, a catalog that's talking to catalog Mongo, and so on and so on. We can take a deeper look inside and look at so everything revolves around defining namespaces, global namespaces. We have two, so that's my enterprise end-to-end demo namespace. I can look at the performance and different latencies. I can look at number of services that I have in my global namespaces. I can look at my service instances. So these are different pods that run on different nodes across my clusters. Some of them are on Amazon. Some of them are, actually, it seems that all of them are running on Amazon on different clusters, but it could be on-prem as well. We can look at the different infrastructure, what are different nodes that they run on, and so on and so on. Okay, that was easy. What does your path to production look like? Let's have a bit of discussion in the section after this in our question and answer section. But before we go, how do you learn more about what Tanzu can do for you? Well, get in touch with us. Visit our homepage at tanzu.vmware.com. Start learning today at the Tanzu Developer Center with getting started guides, code samples, workshops, great videos and demos of modern apps development in action. Start reading about the customer case studies at the Paving the Road to Modern Apps. Talk to your local VMware and Tanzu representative about booking a similar deep dive and Tanzu workshop where we get into the details of the specific Tanzu products. And finally, come visit us in September. There is an online free event conference, multi-day conference, where lots of our customers speak about Tanzu and how Tanzu helped them in their business. Thank you.
Thank you, Neven. That was quite a power walk through just some of the offerings from the VMware Tanzu portfolio. It can seem quite overwhelming if you haven't worked with application development or have previously tried creating automatic deployment pipelines. But as you may know, an elephant can only be eaten in small bites, and you have to start where you feel you already have a foothold and build from there. It is quite a journey, and that's why VMware has Tanzu Labs, which is a whole department in VMware that does nothing but dive in at customers and teach them the programming and infrastructure skills it takes to get through this journey. Each customer has its own unique journey, and we try to facilitate that with Tanzu Labs. You may quite well already have some of the elements Neven talked about in place at your business, and I must stress that VMware would rather integrate with what you have than replace something that already works for you. It is your journey, not ours. The most important thing for us is that you use the best of what VMware Tanzu offer to enable you to release applications faster, more cost efficient, and with better security than before. I really hope you still have some questions. They have been trickling in for a while, and we've been pushing some for this Q&A. But I hope that you're ready to ask some questions, because we really want to hear from you. But now it's time for the Q&A session. So Henrik, have you been monitoring the Q&A window?
I have, yes, I have. So we have a few questions, but maybe before we go there, maybe just also a reflection on what Neven was saying, right? So, one way to work with us is, of course, to look at how to modernize the infrastructure, how to make your platform, whether it's a cloud or your vSphere infrastructure, available for containers and Kubernetes. But also, we can also work with you in what we call a navigator, where we look at the application portfolio you have today, and then with meetings and tools and whiteboards, we together with you find out what applications are suited for you to modernize, and then the platform comes after that, you could say. So in VMware, we can work both ways with you, as I said in the keynote also. So actually, one of the questions, and I can take that first, is how are you packaging this? How are you positioning this? Is it part of the Enterprise Plus today, or how does it work? So what we have done is that we today do have a breadth of products. We have service mesh, we have container management system with Tanzu, we have many things. So we try to package the offerings depending on the journey you're on. And we start with Tanzu Advanced, which is the largest package that includes pretty much everything you would need, as Neven was showing in the demo, right from the container management platform on vSphere and the cloud, up to a mission control to manage Kubernetes clusters across, also including the build service, including application catalog, service meshes, observability, and even databases, right? So you have the full breadth and package in Tanzu Advanced. If we go down to Tanzu Standard, we then take out kind of the developing tools and just focus on having mission control to manage Kubernetes clusters you might already have, or the ones that you are building with Tanzu. And then Tanzu Basic is just basically our runtime for Kubernetes on vSphere, directly integrated with vSphere, and that's it. And then, of course, pricing is accordingly to those. But we have a very low starting point with Tanzu Basic, and then more of value selling on the Tanzu Advanced Suite. So it's easy to get started, and it's a low price point also to get started. Another question is maybe more for you, Kim. One is that how can we migrate our existing Kubernetes clusters to Tanzu?
Yeah, so I saw a bit of different variations on that, and sorry for not answering directly. We want to put it in this session at the end, but yeah. So what do you do if you build something yourself and you want to move to Tanzu and run Kubernetes directly into the vSphere hypervisor? So there are definitely more than one way to roam regarding this, but one way is that in a perfect world, you would have written your application to run on Kubernetes in a way that use all the agnostic parts of Kubernetes, the way that it abstracts from the underlying infrastructure. And if that were true, and it's unfortunately rarely not, but then it would be quite easy to just redeploy or maybe use Valero, the de facto open source backup product from VMware, to snapshot the current state of the application and then deploy and attach that to the new cluster. But unfortunately, Kubernetes, it's been quite a journey, and early on there were quite some gaps in Kubernetes, and some resorted to sort of bridge those gaps, not via how you coded your applications, but rather than relying on a specific way a Kubernetes distribution would sort of try to plug that hole. But sometimes it ended up being quite sticky, so it's not easy to move an applications between Kubernetes clusters, even though they are somewhat conformant. But the conformance test is an easy way to sort of gauge your application. Run that Sonobuoy conformance test against your cluster and your application. You saw that in Neven's session, where some parts of the application got triggered with some red markings around BusyBox and all other parts of the application. That can give you an indication of how easy it is to move. And it's really the reason why that we really strive with the Tanzu Kubernetes grid distribution. That is the same distribution you run in whatever cloud you prefer. You can run it on top of vSphere, or even better with vSphere inside vSphere, where we have embedded the management cluster into vSphere. We strive really to make that as vanilla and upstream as possible. So if there are still any gaps around enterprise use cases for Kubernetes, we want to fix that upstream in Kubernetes and not create our own custom duct tape solution and strip on the product and then maybe make it a bit more sticky for customers so they can't leave. So it's not an easy. It can be a little bit of journey itself, but we can help you evaluate the application as well if you want us. So if you have the need, or you just want to do a proof of concept, reach out. As Henrik mentioned, we do have quite a set of tools that can help sort of analyze and evaluate how tough the move's going to be.
Thanks, Kim. Another one we have here, maybe a little along the lines, our developers want us to run containers and manage Kubernetes on the data center. Does it require us to go out and invest in net new IT hardware and create a new design for our infrastructure?
Well, maybe not. If you are running VMware and running vSphere, there's no easy button, but an almost easy button is really get yourself upgraded to vSphere 7, because that's a native capability built into vSphere 7, especially if you're on vSphere 7 update 1 and newer. Then it's built in. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with the Tanzu Kubernetes grid. It is still a per core license purchase, but the capabilities are there in vSphere 7. If it's not possible to run or upgrade to vSphere 7, maybe you're on a managed hosted environment or something else, then it's possible to buy as a service, or even with the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, there's an option to install that on vSphere 6.7, for example. But it's not as integrated, and there's less of an easy button there, really. It's more tough work. But there is lifecycle capabilities built into both, but it's way easier when you run vSphere 7.
Okay, thanks, Kim. And another question around that, which I maybe can try and answer is, it says, how does VMware integrate into the new abstraction layers on Kubernetes, like CSI, CNI for storage and networking? So one of the things I noticed when I started out in this role about 3 years ago was, with Kubernetes and with containers, there was this idea that with microservice, you weren't that dependent on the infrastructure. You didn't really need to take those considerations as much in because you didn't have persistent storage and such. But we've seen over the last years that that has also become in many of the application modernization efforts a need to have persistent storage and need to understand the network abstraction from the Kubernetes namespace and CNI down to the actual physical infrastructure and virtualization layer. So in VMware, besides Tanzu and the product offerings we have around that, we also modernize our vSphere, our vSAN, and our NSX. So if you look at the latest releases, say of vSAN, which came out this week, we've integrated with object storage together with partners like Minio. We have modernized NSX to be container networking aware. We've launched our own open source networking portfolio, Tranæs, as Neven was saying, and we've implemented Kubernetes control plane inside vSphere. So we also modernized and actually moved a lot of our own software to be container aware and Kubernetes aware, not just for Tanzu but also for other distributions. So all of that is to make it easier for the operator to use and offer a container platform for the developers in the organization. Yeah. Have you seen any other questions, Kim, or you want to add to that?
No, just a little bit add to that, please. Is that if you're not a VMware operator yourself, but you probably have VMware operators in your business, and they have a large set of tools already from us in the vRealize suite, and with even our automation product, but especially around the operations, the log inside and network inside products. There's a huge potential there to make the day two life easier when you're operating a large Kubernetes offering, because with service mesh and Kubernetes and a software-defined network, maybe on top of a new software-defined network, then there's a lot of abstraction here. So who's to fault when something doesn't communicate or run as fast as you want? So that's where the network insight portfolio and operations manager from VMware and the rest of the suite in vRealize, it's as you mentioned, Henrik, it's now all Kubernetes and container aware. So we can unravel those abstractions and tie things together and correlate things that was previously not possible. And that makes it the life of VMware operator a lot easier, because now he can use the tools that they can help there. And if you don't have those tools already, try them out. There's always a 60-day trial period from VMware, and it can really help you unravel the abstraction upon abstraction that you can end up with running modern applications.
That's it. I don't have more questions, so I just want to say thank you for joining the webinar today and being with us. And this will also be recorded, so you're welcome to watch the recording at a later time.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending.